Crypto Night with Big Bird and Montimus. It doesn't get any better than this. I mean, really, does it? I don't know. I don't think so. I mean, being out here, I finally got the studio of my dreams. I built it with my own hands, and it kind of works. I still got some issues, but Montimus has been wrestling with his microphone, and Big Bird, of course, is always ready. So we're going to talk about crypto, about Japan, about the Clarity Act, about really let me just, I'll just launch into it. The lack of clarity, the lack of, and it's okay. I'm used to it. I mean, the lack of an economic, um, because we're on new ground. We're in a new territory. We're in, you know what? I'm gonna go into this metaphor before we start. My parents, when my father retired, they bought a small sailboat, and they lived on the sailboat for 5 years. And periodically they would call me and say, "You want to come by? We're in," like they were in Fort Lauderdale. They spent a lot of time in the Caribbean, but they called me from Fort Lauderdale. And at the time, I think I was just, I was new to AA, and I was like thinking, like, should I really, will there be meetings, or this kind of thing. But they took me out on their little boat, their sailboat, and this was an amazing adventure for my parents. And they took me into the Gulf Stream. Now, I don't know if you guys have, you guys are, I know Big Bird's military, at least, that have you been in the Gulf Stream? Yeah. Okay. So you are in the middle of the ocean, and then you cross this line, this dimension, and suddenly you're in another world, a completely different reality. The Gulf Stream has its own birds, different kind of birds, different colored water. It feels different. The temperature of the water is different. It's a totally different environment within the big environment. So I'm thinking more and more that as truthers and as people who follow the economics, the social, the political, the legal, the pharmaceutical, all aspects of this new reality, we are becoming more and more like we live in this alternative dimension. I mean, okay, let's put aside all the, I'm in a 5D level, that kind of stuff. But just we live in a separate reality. So like most people are gnashing their teeth over whether the Clarity Act is going to get passed, whether the Save America Act is going to get passed. But it's probable that the three of us here are already like, it's all a movie, man. I mean, it's going to roll out the way it's going to roll out. We have no control over it. It makes no sense to somebody who's kind of behind the scenes. It's like in the old days, I used to work backstage. So when you watch a production, like a big production, and you're in the wings, it's a totally different feeling than in the audience, right? So the movie is for the people in the audience, but we're kind of like backstage, anons, like doing our thing to try to help out in any way we can. But it's so, I'm just saying that as truthers, by the way, I'm watching this movie now called The Truthers, which is on Netflix, which is it's a B-rated, they probably made it on a few $1,000s. I mean, and yet it is such a moving production because it's so real. It's not fancy Hollywood. It's just like people, man. And so anyway, I'm just saying that as the three of us are, we've come together to help people understand the situation in the world. But we're kind of like backstage, man. And it's like, we're not watching, in wonder, like what's really, like people like the normies are kind of like, I know something's up, but I don't know what it is. I don't, but we're like kind of on a different level. But I just wanted to express that thought that that we are here to help people, certainly to make sure that they are invested, that they're not going to get they're not going to be um, they're not going to join the fear people, and you're not going to sell your XRP now just because it's going down, because you understand its true value. That's something that we really want to we want to emphasize. But the what are we watching? Are we watching the movie play out, or hello, or are we just watching? I don't know what. I'm just saying that we are in a kind of a kind of a Gulf Stream situation where we're in the ocean, but we're not really part of it.
Well, there's a big part of understanding that we live in some sort of a matrix, and as the scripture says, peace beyond understanding. Sometimes that's a little bit more difficult when we focus on what's right in front of us, but absolutely.
It's different when you leave what you're used to and you go to another part of the world, and in that transit, that there's a transition into a whole new world. I mean, I lived in Japan for 9 years, and I became accustomed to living there. And anytime I had to come back to the States, like, I had anxieties, like deep rooted anxieties. Like, I don't want to go back there, man. The food sucks. You get paid for everything. I mean, Japan, it's surprisingly affordable. I mean, people that teach English get by on $35,000-$40,000 a year comfortably. I'm not saying pick up and drop your roots over there, but you definitely need to check it out.
You can do that here too if you're willing to live, in a tent under a bridge.
Well, like I
It's not
live,
about a van down by the river.
I live out off the, I'm off grid, but I saw a clip on X that said a gas station attendant in 1960, that in order for you to have the same buying power as a guy who pumped gas in 1960, you would have to make $7,000 a week.
What?
Seriously? That's 350 grand a year. That's crazy.
To have the same buying power. In other words, in 1960, I think it was 1960, a gas station attendant lived like a millionaire today.
I wonder if they're basing that on housing costs. There's so many things that get taken into the basket. And of course, one of the things we saw during the Obama version 2.0 fake presidency was removing some of the core commodities, energy, housing, certain fuel, food, etc., from the calculations, the stuff that was going up too high.
He totally whacked us with insurance. I mean, I remember my friends calling me and they're like, I got to pay Obamacare. It's like, it's like thousands of dollars a month.
Well, I might have been one of those people that just said no thank you and moved on with that. But the fact that so for example, if I take your example there, $7,000 a week, 350 grand a year, 360-ish, a little bit. What's the average cost of a house? Well, here in Colorado, here in the counties where I'm in, 400,000 or 500,000 is not uncommon for an average home price, and it depends, on kind of an area. So really, that's to say that maybe a gas station attendant could afford a house on a year's salary. Is that the equivalent they're coming up with? I don't know. I'd be curious about it.
I mean, I remember my father. I'm a little older than you guys. I remember my father going. His jaw dropped. He's like, 28 cents for a gallon of gas. I just remember I was a little kid. He was out of his mind. He was like, 28 cents. So, I mean, back in the day, things were, my parents built a house, their own house in Scarsdale, New York, which is a fancy place, for 60 grand back in, 1960.
So I remember fuel in the mid 30s, under 40 cents. And I personally have paid 59 cents a gallon for it when I had my first car.
We don't realize it. We don't understand how we've been completely bamboozled by these criminal cartel people calling themselves the government, the pharmacists, the lawyers, the doctors, the teachers, all of. I mean, teachers. I was a teacher. I'm like, $200 for that textbook? I'm like, really? There's when I look through the textbook, there's nothing, nothing in it. There's nothing in it like a book in 1965, a textbook in 1965 was chock full of information. The book for $200 for the Department of Education was chock full of nothingness, of stupidity.
Well, last week we were talking about the fact that the average person is under much more of what we might call slavery than people realize. People think we're in a free area, and no idea until this veil is lifted just how unfree it is. And when you look at something like the central bank currencies, the fiat currency, we're over 98 cents of the value of the dollar, if you want to call it that. There's a difference between currency and fiat, but we're over 98 cents of it that has been siphoned off in the form of inflation. When you understand how inflation works, what it is, it's basically a world empire tax on anyone that takes the currency. And it happens by just continually devaluing and devaluing. Gold is, over $4,000. Well, from $42 to over $4,000, or back up a little bit further, from $25, $30, etc. Gold didn't become 100 times more valuable. Our currency became 100 times less valuable. The asset remained stable. We see that with housing. We see that with everything. And it's just the realization of there's far more slavery than people realize. And that's one of the reasons I'm happy to see that the Trump administration has been doing so much behind the scenes, whittling away at some of the regulations that are stifling business and free enterprise and people.
Well, and paring down government positions. There was an announcement today that DNI just made his 5th round of cuts to the intelligence. That's huge.
Yeah.
The theft in the like we looked at what is it, the America, all these little 3-letter agencies that have been siphoning off our money and buying houses. It's not like they went into government programs and stealing kids. The government agencies. So we're dealing with a vast, unknown criminal cartel that has been siphoning off all the goods, not because they need the goods, but just to keep us in a state of submission, to make our lives miserable, so we wouldn't notice the fact that they're stealing 8 million kids a year.
Yeah. Well, we saw that certainly with several of the last administrations, and there's more slavery right now, especially when you consider children and human trafficking and all of that. There's more slavery right now than there was when slavery was legal. Hey, shout out to Nancy and Paul. Yeah, you're absolutely right. Went off the gold standard, everything started dropping.
So okay, so let me go back to the $1,000 question that I've been asking, and I've been studying for years, and I admit I don't really understand the mechanics of what this means. So maybe you guys can answer this for me. But in the X22 report, which is where I found myself. I mean, back in like 5-6 years ago, I didn't have anyone to talk to about the latest Q post. I was considered already a kookazoid, and anybody that I talked to, I couldn't help but talk about, do you know what's going on in the world? And they're like, no, and they're still like that. But so I used to find solace in listening to the X22 report. It was the only thing that would really get me through the day. It just made me feel like, well, I'm not a total, I'm not schizophrenic, psychozoid, that, I'm just like, I'm on a different information stream than the rest of the world. But
yeah, Dave's always been a little bit ahead of the curve.
Yeah, but not enormously. I mean, once I caught up, I feel like I went beyond it. It's kind of like I used to listen to Rush Limbaugh very much, and then when Q came along, I was like, maybe Rush didn't hear the news. I mean, it's just like it. But the thing that I wanted to ask you guys to explain to me, like I'm a 5-year-old kid, which I really am. What does Dave mean? I think I can answer the question, but I'm hoping you guys can really.
Outside
What,
perspective.
what does he mean when he says gold destroys the Fed? Gold will kill the Fed.
The Fed's entire basis is fiat. Fiat, of course, and I'm sure many of our listeners know this because a lot of them seem to be above average educated on some of this stuff. But for those that don't, fiat really just means, frankly, it means fake. It means that there is a note issued, and notice it says note on it. It's an instrument of debt. It's not actual currency. It's the opposite of money. And it is issued to represent the theory of a value. What it actually represents is debt, and it can't happen when there's asset back. So if I handed you, say, one of Kennedy's silver certificates or something, it's exchangeable for value. A Federal Reserve note is not. It simply has value because somebody said it's worth something. It holds its value because it's petrodollar. It's tied to oil. It went off the gold standard in 73. It's backed by the good faith of the U.S. government, which of course is is kind of, we chuckle at that when we look at it in hindsight 2020. But really, it boils down to it's monopoly money. And because I'm the banker, I'm the central banker, and I hand out the monopoly money, and by golly, you'll go to jail if you make your own monopoly money or if you do anything else. So we want you to believe that it's actually money. So that's what gives it its value. But fiat always returns to its intrinsic value of zero, as Voltaire said. What gold does is it has tangible value of its own as a physical asset, because the metal itself is physical. It's, like a commodity. It has properties that are beneficial. It's the most malleable metal known to man, doesn't tarnish, et cetera, et cetera. We can go down the list of why. Scarcity being one of those. It has to have intrinsic value. It has to have scarcity, limited supply, et cetera, et cetera. And so it becomes something that can say, okay, this value is not collapsing. And most importantly, it is limited. We can't issue more supposed gold or silver certificates than what we actually have the ability to say, okay, bring it back and I'll give you an ounce of gold and exchange it. Fiat divorces all of that. It's the ability to say, you know what? We need another $1 trillion on the books. Computer entry, $1 trillion, hand it out. Okay, you owe me an interest on that debt that we just fictitiously created out of $1 trillion. And so now everything is inflated because inflation happens when there's more currency of whatever the accepted currency is in the economy than what they're supposed to be per the goods of the economy. So therefore the average value of the dollar has dropped because there's now too many dollars to go around for what used to be there. So when you double the amount of dollars, you effectively, over a period of equalizing time, cut their value in half. Well, that's what fiat does. There's no longer a tether to something tangible such as reality. So going back to, and it doesn't even have to be gold, but going back to anything that is truly a tangible intrinsic value asset, it has value within itself rather than just because we claim it has something, causes the Fed's existence to be null and void. Congress gets to print money, and the Fed's purpose was simply to siphon wealth through making fictitious loans. And so it's that idea of assigning a value and therefore limited amounts. So you can't just hyperinflate the currency by printing way too much of it or making up new debts whenever you get there. So you want to piggyback on that, Big Bird?
No, man, you stole my thunder, dude.
Boom! Wasn't my intention.
No, and I like the way you describe it, Monty, because it's much more eloquent and poetic. I'm more direct and to the point, and I tend to have a tendency to go over people's heads. So I like your version much better.
So we are waiting for gold-backed currency, and once it is established, then the fiat currency will understand that you're like, you come to a store and you want to buy bratwurst. I was telling a Big Bird about The meat in Mojave County is really good. So, and you bring them some fiat currency and you say, yeah, here's $18. I want to buy six um, beef bratwurst. I don't eat pork. And then Andy, who's behind the counter, says to me, he's going to say to me one day, "What, Ellie? What's this stuff? What's this green stuff, man? I mean, this is, I have a meat store, and if you don't give me something gold backed, I mean, what am I going to do with this money? I mean, at what point does that happen?"
So
I wish I had a crystal ball to give you an answer. Money, you and I
I'm
were
not, I'm not asking for when, but I'm asking like the mechanics behind it. Like, at what point, how do you see this whole transformation in regarding money taking place? I mean, I've been a podcaster for at least 5 years, and every time somebody says, "Ellie, next Thursday," I'm like, "Oh, really?" And over the years, in the beginning, I would be really excited. I'm like, the EBS is coming. The value of money is going to change but over the years, and it's going to happen at the beginning of next month, like the Clarity Act, the way they're working us with the Clarity Act. It's going to happen in February, it's going to happen in March, and then, well, really, it's going to happen in April maybe, and then May, and it's just like, so the when is, I mean, that's just part of the movie, and whenever they decide that that's correct. But how do you see this unfolding? Because if in fact there is a currency, let's say the cryptocurrency is backed by gold in some way, um, then you go to the meat store with $18. Andy's just going to be like, "Hey, man, Ellie, I know you've been giving me cash all this time, but I mean, what am I going to do with it? They're just worthless pieces of paper."
well, we can only speculate by looking around at the crumbs and picking them up and saying, what do these puzzle pieces look like? And I'm going to say, I don't know the timing. I'm not a financial advisor. But it was interesting, Trump often in The Art of the Deal, if you read that book, The Art of the Deal, which is fantastic for understanding what he does with foreign policy and all this kind of stuff, he frequently will troll somebody with throwing something out there outlandish, and then you recognize, oh wait, that's the art of the deal. He's getting a reaction, and then he's utilizing that in his negotiations and so on. And sometimes it's because he's planting a seed. And it was over a year ago, right after he took office, he was talking about auditing Fort Knox, and then that kind of fell on the crack. Well, I don't think it fell on the crack. I think that was him planting a seed, saying, okay, just let that marinate for a little bit. Back in May, he said, it's time. Okay, it's time to audit the gold. Do I believe it's all in Fort Knox? No. Do I believe it's been audited and accounted for? Yes, because when we look around at the crumbs and the bits and pieces, we see several things that happen. You don't audit the gold unless you're getting ready to do something with it. If you're going to change something on the books, then you want to know where you stand on the books. And so just a few weeks after that, we have the Treasury Secretary standing up and saying, yeah, we have over $1 trillion in gold. Wait, what? Did you audit it? Where'd that number come from? Because it sure isn't sitting there at 38 to 50 billion at $42.22, which is actually the official value. So that's one of those little, peek behind the curtain at what's coming. Kind of like when a few months before that, when they said, hey, give yourself an instant pay raise, you can change your tax deductions. They're giving us a glimpse behind the curtain of what's coming, and it's timely, because when he says there's over $1 trillion, well, that means you got to take that $42.22 official U.S. government value, and you've got to extrapolate that into market value, and that's over 100 times. And when you put that at what the known amount of ounces of gold is, and I don't remember, Big Bird, correct me, I think it's 260, 270 million ounces, something like that. Whatever the number is, and honestly, I don't pay that much attention to it because I know the number is fake anyway. The published number is not. They're not going to tell us the real number. But when you plug that in, it's like, wait a minute, they're telling us right there, they're getting ready to do something with it, and they're getting ready to change its effective value simultaneous. So we see the things lining up for it. You look at the Clarity Act, right? What are we doing? Discerning commodities versus securities and so on. What it's really doing, though, is it's setting up the banking rails. Iraq is going through this week and even 2 days ahead of schedule, got some of their banking system set up. Well, what are the rules that that's going to run on? Oh, well, that's why we need Clarity Act. Because all of a sudden, a bunch of these things start to line up and it's boom, 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 right? The militia's deadline is September 30th. Why in the world is al-Zaidi flying around to Tehran? Why is he flying to Saudi Arabia and going to all these places? Well, because historically they have to deal with whoever has the gun before you can have a stable economy. And but I kind of got ahead of myself and sidetracked from your question, so I'm going to shift it back.
No, I appreciate, and I'm sorry that that I tend towards a different way of looking at things. But that's just my I just have to move out the sunlight. But okay, so we all are aware of the fact that the Clarity Act is. I mean, some people are like, it's happening. I mean, okay, so I have a friend who is convinced they're very ahead of things. They're, truthers, and they're convinced that they can bank on the fact that the RV is going to happen.
Oh, that was a terrible time to break up.
Right.
He froze right when he gave us. We'll give him a minute to
going to happen 2:00 on Monday morning. So so the time element has no meaning to me, but you can see the mechanics unfolding, so which I think are much more important to watch. I mean, if you and I, like probably most podcasters right now, are like, well, the Clarity Act is going to, and I heard somebody say, well, the Clarity Act, if the Senate passes it, then it has to go back to the House, and maybe next December, I mean, I don't know. I don't think anything is clear except for the direction.
All right. So the Clarity Act, I'm going to give credit to Vincent Scott, who I follow on X. Very brilliant young man, marketing genius. He's really in tune with the legal aspect and cryptocurrencies, and just very intelligent man. He has pointed out that, okay, even if we got the Clarity Act signed tomorrow, Congress is in recess until August 30th. So nothing's going to happen until September anyway, unless they call in a special session to get Congress to pass it, to review it and say, yes, I agree.
We just did.
Sorry, go ahead, Money.
Well, I don't want to take away from what you're saying. I'm just saying Trump kind of just did that indirectly, but I'll come back to that. You continue first.
Yeah. Now take it a step further. So there's still going to be some time, even if everything were to align. It's not going to happen until any sooner than September. So we're still at least a minimum a month away. And I'm not trying to hurt anybody's feelings here, but there's also the fact I saw another post, unconfirmed, but the suggestion there was if the Congress and Senate fail to pass the Clarity Act, the SEC is prepared to step in and make their own rules. Now that's contradictory to the Chevron deference, the passage or the overturning of the Chevron deference. I don't know if you're familiar with that, but there was a case back in the 70s where it was Chevron versus something, and the courts were deferring to Chevron as the local oil experts to make the call. And that's when you started getting all these big non-governmental agencies making their own rules, kind of like the EPA was making these ridiculous smog rules that all these car manufacturers had to follow. And that's why we had the addition of all these electronics and passive sensors to make sure that we're burning clean. Well, that got overturned back, I think 2023 or 2024. Nobody really understood the impact that had. So these non-governmental organizations no longer have that pull anymore. So anyway, I digress. But going back to the Clarity Act, if the SEC were to step in and make temporary rules so that we could get the ball rolling forward with things like XRP, XLM, so that the DTCC and whatever agreement there is going to be with SWIFT or replacing SWIFT with XRP and the big banks, that way they can get things rolling in the right direction. Now, going back to another point, and I'm sorry, I'm trying to manage all these thoughts in my head because Monty was bringing up all this good information. Yeah, and I love you, brother. That's why I like having you here, because you just get all the creative juices going. There's what's called the reverse carry trade going on in Japan. Now, Monty and I both did a little sleuthing around before we got on here, and there's not a whole lot of evidence other than the fact that Japan is talking about raising their rates. They just raised them like 0.75%. They're talking about raising them 3% very soon. And why? Because the dollar to yen, for every $1, it's almost 164 yen. I mean, that's the highest it's ever been in the history of the Japanese yen. And why does that matter?
Well, some people think it's going up more.
Well, and it could possibly, but what that means is that historically, over the last 30 years, companies and banks and wealthy, billionaire elites are going and borrowing the Japanese yen at next to nothing, almost 0% interest rate. Well, if they go start raising interest rates, that means these guys these organizations and people that borrowed all this yen and invested it elsewhere into the world economy and were getting much higher interest rate than what they were having to pay back. If those interest rates go back up in Japan, that means they have to pay that loan back that much faster. They're going to lose all that money that they made. That's the whole premise of the Japanese reverse carry trade, or the carry trade unwinding. So I hope that makes sense to our listeners out there. But that's a big deal. Why? Because Japan carries like 2/3 of the United States debt, and people or countries around the world have been dumping U.S. bonds because they don't want to be caught holding all that debt.
Well, and just to clarify a tiny little bit on what you're saying, to take it a half a step further, that means instead of borrowing a bunch of low interest yen to go make all these investments, now it's going to make more sense, and that's reverse carry, to go borrow something else and come back to the yen. So it reverses the direction of that investment. And that often happens. It's kind of like shorting on a stock. It happens when somebody expects the value to increase, typically. So it's really just the market saying, we see something coming, kind of like this week. Right now, a week ago, it was a 1 in 8 chance that on this coming Wednesday, first chair meeting of the new Kevin Warsh, the new Fed chair, would up the rates. And now there's probably, a 1 in 3 chance is what they're saying, that we might see like a 25 basis point bump or something. So there's a lot of things going on with central banks, obviously, like what just happened with Indonesia. And yes. I see that in your face right there. It's the governor of the Central Bank of Indonesia. Well, they've lost 7% against the US dollar in spite of a 100 basis point increase. And so when your rupiah is sliding, even though you're doing all the things, well, then it's time to step down and hand the reins. And sure, there's some politics going on with the president's nephew and, maybe the finance minister and some other stuff. But what's really going on behind the scenes that somebody would step down for personal reasons without any, obvious signs? And we're seeing more and more of these shakeups going around the industry.
Yep.
Well, a little bit of my confusion stems from the fact, and maybe you can clarify this as well, is that I've been hearing, it's like a Clarity Act. The Clarity Act is coming. It's, all the banks are required to use XRP now. And, I've been hearing this for so where am I going with this? The Operation Sandman, where all the governments are planning to dump all the U.S. treasuries. It seems like every week I get on, it's like next, Tuesday at 5:00, Operation Sandman. all countries are going to dump the U.S. treasuries, and this is the kind of like disconnect that we're dealing with. This goes back to my original like thought about, are we in a different, because we have a little bit of knowledge, are we in the Gulf Stream, are we in a different dimensional understanding? Because I mean, I'm seeing on X every other day the Operation Sandman. They're going to dump all the U.S. treasuries, and the fiat currency is going to zero.
Well, my
It's
speculation is not yet. I could be wrong, but my speculation is that was headed that way fast. But Trump going around doing what he's doing around the world with effectively kneecapping BRICS and tariffing this and that and increasing the strength of the dollar, which is part of what's going on in Indonesia, right? As we see the Iraq Central Bank in Baghdad getting ready to boost some things and the U.S. dollar getting stronger. Well, the other side of that balance sheet, that ledger, is some of those things, such as the rupiah, are also getting weaker. It's the balancing of that ledger. And so for the fact that that's getting stronger and people are now looking around the world and saying, hey, let's get some more of this U.S. Treasury. And I think it's going to collapse because I think that's necessary to move into the asset backed. But I think in the meantime, in the temporary, that need to suddenly abandon and drop the dollar has been maybe just turned down to simmer for the moment. But that's my thought. I think a lot of things are waiting on clarity. Something that Big Bird was talking about a while ago, and we don't really know when it's coming through. The good news is it's probably up for a vote next week. Bad news is, the bad news is they don't, at least according to the chair, they don't currently have the votes. There's 53 members in the party. They need 60 to pass the vote. So Trump's done something that no president has done that I'm aware of in an election year, is told the Senate, hey, you can't take your summer vacation. Stick around and get some work done. And he used the SAVE Act as the cover for it. And that's obviously necessary. I loved the way he responded to some of the reporters. One of the reporters like, dude, well, don't you think they should be back at home campaigning? And then he's like, what a stupid question. They got to get this done. But
good job.
Yeah, do your job. But I think there's more to it than that. I think without directly naming clarity, and this is just my speculation, I think without directly naming clarity, what he did was he gave them the one thing that they don't have, and it's time on the floor on the calendar. Well, we can't do clarity because of, we don't have time on the calendar before the recess. Well, guess what? Now you got time on the calendar before the recess. So let's name it SAVE. Meanwhile, we'll stick in clarity right in front of you. Why? Because the tokenization deadline is October. For New York, for Wall Street, we start to see that financial rails. Well, it doesn't make, by the time they come back from their summer break into a fall session, if they were to do clarity right then, now all of a sudden you're trying to bring about the rules and the rails that this banking system is going to run on, these financial tokens and such are going to run on at the same time that you're trying to start them up and running. And that affects everything. That's a huge part of what's going on with Baghdad right now, with the dinar, with the 60 billion plus that was just, being tossed around in some of the deals in the White House between Zaidi's commission and Trump. And so what I see going on, because the Iraqi banking system just completed some of their steps 2 or 3 days ahead of schedule, and now we've got some of them changing over this coming weekend to some, banking software that out of SWIFT, that some have already changed, some have not. So there's some things going on. And so it appears to me that, Trump is kind of pulling the strings by saying, hey, stick around and do the SAVE Act. And while you're at it, let's get clarity done, because we need these rules. This is effectively the rails that the entire tokenization of the future financial system of this country, including our asset-backed system that's coming, is going to be running on. So without that, things are running a little bit blind in places.
Right. So there's something else here to it. And you mentioned Central Bank of Iraq. I'm going to give Meg out of New York credit for this. They brought it up that the digital dinar, or the digital IQD, is going to be a CBDC, a central bank digital currency. That, to me, is a little bit troubling. However, can CBDCs and DeFi tokens, specifically like USDT, USDC, XRP, RLUSD, everything that's pegged one for one with the dollar, can they coexist with CBDCs? Yes, they can. It's just,
if the rules are in place.
Right, if the rules are in place, but you're basically what you're talking about. If you have a CBDC, that is highly governed. It's not private. It falls under whatever government that country belongs to. Whereas like DeFi tokens, like USDC and USDT, those are privately produced. Those are from private organizations that have authorization to go ahead and do that. So yes, they can coexist in the same realm, but they serve different purposes. They serve different masters. The DeFi tokens have much less regulation and overbearance from a government standpoint, whereas the CBDCs, I mean, they can pretty much do whatever they want, given whatever the government structure is. So could that potentially be a problem in the future? If we're going to be turning in our dinar, our fiat dinar for digital dinar, and then converting those to something else, yeah, I don't know what that picture looks like. That could be massively complicated. And so anyway, going back to what Monty was talking about, there's a lot of uncertainty that's coming in terms of the Clarity Act, and even our elections coming this fall. We don't even know if they're going to happen. Me personally, I don't think we're going to have midterms. What that landscape looks like is they're not going to pass the SAVE Act. Trump is going to be forced to sign an executive order and declare a national emergency in light of the Federal Voting Act, and so we're going to be placed into a potentially martial law type of framework where the National Guard and the Marines are going to have to deploy. I remember there was something out there where Congress had pointed out that before Trump goes and deploys the National Guard, he has to use the regular military. Well, what's the regular military? U.S. Marine Corps. That Trump does not need any kind of congressional sanction or authorization from it. The Marines serve at the pleasure of the president. So I would see the Marines
getting National Guard rule shifted. I could be wrong. I think that National Guard rule shifted on an EO in the recent years, but I'm not 100% certain on that.
No, that's still a solid. It was. I think what you're referring to is the same thing I'm referring to. The president has to use the regular military before he can use federalized National Guard. Which, okay, by the way, they've already been federalized, 2 years ago?
That's what I'm referring to right there, is the federalization of it.
Yeah. So they've already been federalized.
Okay. Yeah, that's what I was remembering, was the federalization of it. So, but the Marines are direct under.
Things getting really spicy this fall.
Yeah. No matter what happens, how we slice it, and I'm with Ellie. I've been hearing for 15 years in this space. Oh, it's next week. It's next week. It's next week. It's 2:00 Monday morning. It's already happened, and they're just waiting on this. We're waiting on that. And I will say this, oftentimes, and this is certainly true of me, and it's very, I think, true of a lot of people that have been operating in the truther space, is to be right about the events and wrong about the timing. The timing of this movie has shocked nearly everyone involved, myself included, and that's me. I've been right about virtually all the events. I've been wrong about the timing more often than I've been right about the timing, and so I tend to be a little more cautious now about the timing than I used to be, while still trying to be optimistic and saying, yeah, but I see markers, I see road signs, I see the, dead end road sign coming ahead. It's just, it was a little further down the road than I expected it. So there's, no matter what happens, so many things on the docket for this fall that I just don't see how we're going to get through it without some major roller coasters.
Yep. Interesting times.
And yeah.
Yeah, so then really the conclusion is, I mean, I'd say this, but the best thing that one can say right now is, I don't know. I mean, the smartest thing, I mean, all these, I don't listen to other podcasters, but I'm guessing, knowing what I do know about the kind of information that's out there. There's all kinds of speculation. Next Friday, and we were sure this is happening, and this one's coming out with there's not going to be an election, kind of like what Big Bird said, which certainly possible. I mean, to me, this is an old point that I've been making. The actual mechanics of the rollout is, I mean, we're dealing with. Did Big Bird? You're still there? Everybody's still there? Are they? Anyway, it's.
I think his froze.
His froze. Yeah. They're probably messing with us to some degree, but I think we just have to just stay cool and collected and know and not and I've been lucky or not lucky, but if you're timing your life on when the RV is going down and when you're going to get all your money from the Saint Germain fund, I mean, you're not going to have as a pleasant an experience as if you just live. That's so I think that the answer to a lot of these things, and I refer to Big Bird and Monty because they study it. I also study it all the time, but we just have to keep going. We just have to live our lives and not spend so much time waiting for the big event, because the big event, I'm a broken record. The big event is us waking up and realizing, like, hey man, I don't have to live like this anymore. I can live the way I want to live.
Speaking of saying I don't know, somebody was asking about New York school district custodians, and I would just have to say I don't know. I heard the rumor. I have no reference whatsoever to validate any of it.
I can tell you from working in the Department of Education for 20 years that it's a scam. I mean, the money never gets to the kids. It's always, I mean, I could write a book about all the nonsense that goes on, but this is true of the whole government, and they're not even interested. I mean, this is what would drive me crazy as a teacher. They weren't even vaguely, they didn't even pretend to be really interested about in teaching people how to think or analyze or anything like that. It was just like, let's teach them how to do a certain process, and beat it into them. And what skill are you teaching, Ellie? That was always the thing. You have to teach a skill.
Funneling money. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Ellie. Finish that thought,
Go
man.
ahead. I'm just going on. But
well, no, yeah. Just along the same lines of funneling money. I don't know if you guys caught this, but recently the DNC had to put up their headquarters in DC for auction, or no, they had to borrow against it because the Democratic National Convention is broke. Flat out broke. Private billionaires are not giving their money to them anymore. Their USAID and Medicaid schemes have dried up. They're gone. And this nonsense where I saw something about Kamala Harris running for president in 2028. I'm like, on what fumes? You guys got nothing.
Well, she didn't have anything last time. To be fair,
go ahead, Monty.
I just said to be fair, she didn't have anything last time. At least not.
It was all pomp and circumstance. It was pumped up by the media. They were over budget by $1 billion. She owes a lot of people a lot of money. And to be honest with you, I don't think that was the real Kamala Harris. I found a news anchor long ago that laughed. She had that cackling laugh, but she was talking about how she was pulled into these acting lessons, that she was being asked to play a part. I think that's the Kamala Harris that we've been seeing on TV the last couple of years. I know.
And that whole thing with her was really an attempt to get in a Manchurian puppet that would do what they wanted with bypassing all elections. It's a danger to our democracy, really. So the person who served as supposed president on an unelected fake presidency to begin with for the last 6 months was appointed to that position, got last place the one time she did run, never received a single delegate vote in her entire career on either run, and somehow was the last minute magical shoe in without actually having to go through any of the democratic process to get there. The whole thing was a scam to try to get her in place.
Yes.
Because why? Because she's so brilliant?
Well, it's like the
Because
auto
she's
pen.
because
Yeah,
she will do what she's told.
she could, like the auto pen. I mean, they didn't have to deal with anybody. You know, they could do whatever they wanted to. And it's just like the Obamacare came out with like 5 zillion pages worth of law, like instantly. It was like let's change the insurance policy, and then they had like a book. You know, so but all these scams are
And you have to pass it so we can find out what's in it.
right. So yeah, exactly. So I would say like just to kind of wrap this up and tell me if you agree with me. I would say like this. Don't get overly, overly involved in stuff that's coming out informationally, because none of it's new. What I would say is stack silver, stack gold. If you have any money left, buy some ISO 222 coins and just hold on to it. No, and don't let them shake you out. Don't let them convince you, oh, XRP is worth nothing, really. And I mean, I'm not a Bitcoin person, but I would not go there. I mean, if I had a few dollars, I would never buy Bitcoin, but I would buy XLM. So just keep stacking. Just try to ignore the news. And I'm delighted. I don't want to reveal anything, but I'm hearing from Big Bird that he's thinking about his life a little differently. And this is where I believe everyone should be focused on. All this other stuff that you're hearing is just entertainment. And it's wonderful entertainment. 107 comes out and he's very dramatic and he's got a big beard. So I like that. But, really at the end of the day, man, just live your life, stack a little bit, but start to move your life in a direction that makes you happy. I mean, we're coming out of slavery, literally coming out of slavery. And the biggest thing, I mean, as somebody who's a recovering Orthodox Jew, was that we are told that we left Egypt, but God removed our slave-like attitude. He removed for us the feeling that we were slaves. I don't think that's been removed for most of humanity. I think most of humanity is operating, for, as Big Bird said, as slaves. And they're just used to it. And they don't want to change. I mean, I tell people, I start having conversations with people and they're just like, I will explain something. I will, like, I had this friend, this neighbor. I actually have a neighbor like 5 miles away who we sometimes see. And he's telling me the Democrats did this and the Democrat. I'm like, man, this has nothing to do with this, and it just goes right over his head. In the next minute, he's like, well, but the Democrats, and I'm just like, so there's a disconnect, but just hold on to your sanity, hold on to your family, hold on to your love, hold on to the experience of leaving slavery for real.
Ellie, that's a brilliant point. And it begs the question. I'm sure people have seen the animated movie Ants, and when they had to face the grasshoppers, there was more ants than there was grasshoppers. I'm not suggesting an uprising or any kind of civil disobedience, but what I am kind of alluding to is, just about every household in this country owns a gun. And that's what terrifies foreign countries about invading us, is they're not afraid of our military. They're afraid of the citizens. Why? Because we're armed and we can be dangerous. But now what if we put that in perspective of our government, which, it was in the Bill of Rights that whenever a government becomes tyrannical, we have the responsibility of replacing it. So I'm kind of wondering when the heat's going to get turned up enough on this frog that's boiling in the pot of water, when it becomes so much that we finally put aside our differences as Americans. I don't care if you're black, white, yellow, purple, polka dotted, male, female. I don't care if you're gay, if you're confused so far as to be transgender. I don't care. We're all Americans. And if we all came together and we just ousted these retards that are, I'm sorry, our society is a social experiment run by the dumbest people on the face of the earth. And if we just
Mm-hmm.
went in there and removed them and we held our own free and fair elections, paper ballots, in person voting, with a, national issue ID, whether it be a passport or a driver's license, and then prove it with a birth certificate, and we actually put people in there that cared, that aren't bought off by these billionaire elites, yeah, I think we'd have a much nicer place to live. And we probably wouldn't have to work 9 to 5. So we should only work 15 to 20 hours a week.
You
And
talk about getting rid of all the things that's pitting people against each other in the first place.
I mean, hell, man, I'm thinking about leaving my job, which pays a very respectable salary, and just take 12 months off. Yeah, I've got my retirement from the military, and it would certainly make for a different kind of lifestyle, but I wouldn't have to get up Monday through Friday and go work, 9 to 5, and miss out on special events or moments with my children that, right now I've got buy-in from the whole family. They're like, yeah, let's think about doing this, Dad.
Yeah,
it would probably be the best thing to just walk away. Anyway, that's enough about
I agree with you. I think that humanity, we're not necessarily. I mean, the gun thing is an important thing. We have to be armed. We're not going to give up our guns. I mean, when I got to Arizona, I was from New York City, and I was just like, I walked into a gun store and I was like, can I have one of those? I was like afraid to talk to the guy behind the counter because I thought it was New York City. And then in Arizona, they're like, you don't have a gun? They're like, what's wrong with you? It's like, right. It's a whole different, it's a different mindset. Thank God. But but in terms of like, we as a collective, man, we got the power, man. All we have to do is change our mind. And the other thing I also want to say is these people are not so dumb because they're in control. I mean, yes, the individually on, if you look at each person there, but they're, I mean, the cabal, this is a criminal, highly organized, criminal, murderous, enterprise that's been perpetrated against humanity. And we got to just come together in just a nice way and just be together and just say, hey man, like I went to the Department of Motor Vehicle after a policeman threatened to put me in jail. He says, you don't have a license and you don't have insurance. I said, yeah, and I'm not going to get any because it's not in the Constitution. And I'm not, I was kind of testing the waters. So I went down to the motor vehicle guy and I said, I want to talk to the guy in charge. And I said, this is Arizona. I mean, Kingman, because Kingman is kind of like a freedom place. But I went to the guy in charge and I said, I want to talk to the boss. And I said, I'm not getting a license or insurance and they're going to throw me in jail. And he said, well, he kind of like made it sound like, well, we're not really connected. If he said that, it's not. And no one's bothered me. No one has bothered me since. So, there is this, kind of the idea of going into this Gulf Stream, that we're in a different reality as it is. We just have to like open our eyes and realize that whatever was true 2 months ago may not be true today. And when we start collectively testing the waters, it's like the Wizard of Oz, man. It's like this little old man behind a screen. And as soon as you say, who is this guy? I am the wizard. It's like, you're just like a little old man, and you got no jurisdiction over my driver's license or anything else in my life.
Hey, Big Bird, were you thinking you wanted to touch on 589 or leave that for another time, or is that irrelevant?
I think it's kind of irrelevant because I think you and I diced it up that there wasn't really a whole lot of substance, that it was basically internet chatter, and people were talking about 589 of the Japanese Civil Code and how that pertained to the reverse carry trade and how 589 is that magic number that people are pegging to XRP, that's its first plateau. And I really want to buy into the hype, but I can't. There's not enough substance there for me to really say one way or the other.
Yeah, I
And
concur.
furthermore, I lived in Japan for 9 years, and I never heard of anything of any article of a civil code. But that's just me.
I concur.
So I think we should wrap up the meeting, and give me, like, what is your takeaway from all this, for you guys, like, this particular video that we made. What's your take home from all this?
Monty, go ahead.
On the spot. It's just, just keep plugging along. Right now, all we're doing is looking at pieces of the puzzle popping up in front of us, and some of them are just literally a game of whack-a-mole, and then some of them are worth paying attention to, and half the time the discernment between those is the place where we're supposed to be living, saying, okay, what's coming, what's happening. I'm not sure that it's happening in the next 6 hours, and if you don't send this email off to 19 of your friends and contact some Nigerian prince or something. But I do think that that things are on a roll for certain and trending in the right direction.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, I agree, Monty. Folks, just look, this is just one man talking. It's not financial advice. It's just for entertainment. Live your life. Live your life. Keep your head on a swivel. Because, of course, if there's some sort of civil disturbance, you're going to want to be able to protect yourself and protect your family or your loved ones. And, while things are still cheap, buy them up. Don't wait. I mean, if you're going to wait for the price to start accumulating and then you're going to start buying, I'm going to call you a fool. And I would tell you, don't do that. I would say buy now. Well, things have basically leveled out. We found the floor. We're looking at those same resistance levels in silver, gold, crypto. I really don't see massive movements. I don't see any world changing events outside of what's going on in Iran that's causing gas prices to spike up again. But that's going to be part of the movie. It's to get people's attention. So just do you. Don't worry about what everybody else is doing. I love my family. I love my kids. I love coming on here and talking with Ellie and Monty and being able to spread some information. We don't make any money off of this. This is for fun.
And it is fun. I really enjoy. I mean, I've made it my. I have a community. I'm starting an off-grid community, and we're enjoying. We enjoy life. We're experimenting with different kinds of fruits and vegetables and chickens. We're going to get turkeys, and we're we're living off my pension, and I'm just happy as can be. It's just, and I think everyone should really just take the liberty to really look beyond the Wizard of Oz. Just go for it. So yeah. So anyway, I really enjoyed the time that we spent together. I love you guys. It's so much fun. And it's a nice break for me to to get to have other folks to bounce ideas off of. But enjoy the Gulf Stream, man. Enjoy being among the small percentage of humanity that has some kind of clue as to what's going on. Enjoy it. So I'll play a tune, and if you guys want to, and then we'll come back. And if you guys think you want to share something else, that's cool. Hopefully I can do this because I haven't been so successful. But this is a tune I wrote. I wrote this really the chorus like 40 years ago when I was waking up to the fact that I didn't have to live the way I've always been living. I didn't have to live like a New Yorker. I mean, I was living in the South, and I woke up on a front porch, and some friends were with me, and they were telling me like, hey man, it's a new morning. It's a new day. So yeah, so let's play this tune and then we'll close it out. Let's see if I can pull this off.
On the front porch, Sunday at dawn. The night was hotter than hell and forever long. I can see the first light breaking through the trees. I feel the changes in the cool breeze of freedom. And it's a new morning. It's a new morning. We never saw it coming, hiding in plain sight. Banksters taking power, stealing our lives. They were looking to bury us in debt, shame and fear. But our roots grew stronger as we reached into the air with freedom. Freedom. And it's a new morning. It's a new morning. With each day we're rising up in this world with the power of love, with the power of peace, the power of joy, the power of truth, and the power of freedom. And it's a new morning. It's a new morning. It's a new morning. It's a new morning.
Yeah, so I think
Those
it's a
lyrics,
new
man.
morning.
It's a nice country two-step.
Yeah, I had it produced in Nashville. I'm actually thinking I have a neighbor who was the sound engineer for REO Speedwagon. I may do the next tune with I want a kind of a raw desert feel. I think next for the next tune, but yeah. Anyway, yeah, you
Ellie?
tell the truth. Yeah,
I've got one quick plug here. I think this goes back to last week when I said USDC got kicked out of Europe. I was wrong. I'll own that. So anybody that's out there like, but you said no, when I make a mistake, I come back and correct it. So it was USDT that did not meet micro regulations. So USDT Tether has been delisted off of all the major European exchanges. They've also run into some trouble with the DOJ here in the United States. They say on their website that they're cooperating. I don't know what that means or what that looks like, but for anybody out there that's holding USDT on an exchange, you may want to think about converting that into USD which you can do on the exchanges, or there's one other nugget. Apparently, Bitmart, which is another global exchange, they are potentially going to be shutting down in the near term. So if you hold any cryptos on Bitmart, get them out of there.
Mm-mm.
Interesting. How does that the use of Tether relate to Bitcoin? Does that make Bitcoin more volatile?
No, I think it makes it obsolete because you can't trade USDC. If I might be mistaken, there's very few stable coins out there that will actually translate from, if you want to exchange your Bitcoin for a stable coin, I don't think you're going to be able to do it on Tether in a European exchange. So if we got any listeners out there from Europe,
Yeah, you're almost going to switch to Ripple or something like that, I think.
Yeah, or LUSD. But yeah, somebody said, "Tell the truth, and you'll never have to remember anything you ever said." And yes, that's very, very true. Paul said, "What is that? It sounds like REO Speedwagon." I think it has a REO kind of theme to it. Yeah, your song, Ellie.
Oh, well, thank you so much. Yeah, but it just happened that I'm out here in the desert, and one of my distant neighbors, I mean, they're not so close. My closest neighbor, who it's already like 5 miles away, is was involved with that band. So he has, so we're hoping that our sound will be a little more, anyway, this is neither here nor there. But the point is that everything is good, man, and you just gotta. We live in a beautiful world, and just enjoy it. There are difficulties, but the difficulties are there to kind of like put you into, making you realize that that change is okay. It's okay to change. I mean, we live in a time when people are going to wake up and realize that a lot of the population is no longer here now. What happened to all the people? You have to do your own calculations. But if for the survivors, for us that have survived this crazy time period, this with the medical establishment and these Fauci dudes, we're coming into.
Who wasn't smart enough not to journal all his crimes along the way?
Yeah. Anyway,
Wow.
we'll see you guys next week, and I really appreciate it. And as I always say, use the force. You are the force. Use source. You are source. You are connected. You don't need to go through, I got to meditate 4 minutes here and then do a deep breathing thing and turn around 3 times. You can just talk to God, man, or talk to divine or whatever you want. You just go direct at any time you feel like it. So we are coming together. Humanity is coming together. We're going as a collective consciousness, as you are like the forefront. You are the forerunners of the new consciousness. So just hold on to your stuff. Hold on to your ability to enjoy and grow and just do stuff, man. I mean, I'm so blessed that out here that I always have something to do. And it may not seem like much, but I'm building a turkey coop. I got to cook. I got to do the dishes. These are really blessings in disguise, because otherwise I'd be sitting around on a couch somewhere thinking about how the world is coming to an end and there's nothing I can do about it. And it's like, we don't even have time to have those kind of black pilling moments. We're just enjoying creating a new world, and we're all part of that. So, buckle up and enjoy it, man.
Amen.
All right. So anyway, yeah. Anything, you guys? Any other last? This is what's called a Jewish goodbye. It takes like a few hours to say. It's like
it's the same way in Japan, dude. You spend like the last 15 minutes like bye now.
More cinnamon roll, maybe I'll have a bagel. Okay, but anyway, yeah, that's the deal. Yes, Japanese people are just like Jewish people, I guess. But anyway, it was really, really enjoyed time with you guys, and Let's get out there with a big smile on our face and rock